Rome did not rise on luck. It rose on emperors, one after another, each shaping the world in ways people still feel today. It is a chain of rulers, whose choices shaped the map of Europe, the Middle East and North Africa for more than 1,000 years. Some built calm and progress. Others drove the empire into chaos. This timeline follows every emperor from 27 BC to 1453 AD, starting with the first leader who unified a broken republic, and ending with the last ruler standing behind the walls of Constantinople. The turning point near the end of this story reveals a shift few expect, and it changes how the entire timeline is understood. Rome moves from a shaky republic into a new system built around one leader who holds real control. Years of civil fights weakened the old structure, and people grew tired of endless debates that solved little. A central figure seems like the only way forward. This moment creates a new path where one man's decisions can guide millions. What begins as a fix for disorder becomes the foundation of something far larger, setting the stage for a long line of emperors who will each leave their mark on the empire's history. Marcus Varian rises, as the first emperor, and offers something Rome has not seen in years: steady direction. He brings clear rules and strong organization, giving people hope that the turmoil may end. Under him, roads are repaired, borders are watched closely, and trade flows with fewer problems. Citizens feel safer traveling and working again. His calm approach helps settle arguments that pulled Rome apart. This new structure gains support quickly, and people grow used to the idea that one leader at the top can keep the empire steady. Marcus Varian focuses on rebuilding the heart of Rome, repairing public spaces, creating jobs, and reshaping the city into a center of power. He works to stabilize food supply lines and reinforce areas damaged during past battles. The city begins to look less like a place marked by conflict, and more like a capital ready to lead a vast territory. These changes influence every corner of daily life. Roads bring in grain, markets fill again, and the idea of a strong central empire feels possible. Trade becomes a key factor in Rome's recovery. Marcus Varian strengthens sea routes, improves agreements with nearby kingdoms, and keeps watch on major land crossings. Goods move smoothly, and distant regions begin trusting Roman systems. With this new flow of wealth, citizens see more work opportunities and busy markets. The economy grows, and Rome gains a stronger position across its territories. People begin feeling more secure, knowing the emperor has strong control over both internal order and external connections, laying the foundation for future growth. Borders become a priority. Marcus Varian orders improvements to forts and brings experienced commanders to frontier regions. Patrols grow more organized, and dangers from the outside decrease. Citizens in outer provinces sense real protection for the first time in years. This stability strengthens loyalty toward Rome. People understand that the emperor's decisions directly shape their safety. These steps make the early years of the empire feel solid, and support for central authority grows even stronger as peace becomes part of daily life. Marcus Varian's long rule establishes patterns that later emperors study and try to repeat. He manages the Senate, the military and the people in a steady way that becomes the model. His calm method of solving problems sets expectations for future leadership. But this creates a challenge too, because not every emperor will match his skill. Still, his approach becomes central to the identity of early imperial rule. His legacy guides Rome's understanding of stability and order for generations to come. When Marcus Varian dies, his successors inherit an empire strengthened but still fragile. They take power, knowing people expect them to match his leadership. Early on, they manage to continue his plans, keeping armies supplied and cities active. But each new emperor must earn respect from soldiers and citizens. The transition reveals how much pressure sits on a single person at the top. A smooth start makes people hopeful, but it also shows how quickly things can change if the next leader fails to maintain balance. The first ruling family grows into a recognizable line of emperors. They benefit from association with Marcus Varian and try to follow his style. Their presence brings consistent leadership and helps citizens adjust to life under imperial control. Although their personalities differ, they share loyalty to the structure he created. During their early years, Rome sees stronger administration and growing influence. Their rule lays deeper roots for the empire, showing that the new system might truly last beyond one strong leader. This early group of emperors gains respect by keeping the army organized. They meet with generals, supply troops on time, and reward victories. Soldiers feel valued and stay loyal. With the military in good condition, outer regions experience fewer disruptions. Citizens trust that their leaders can protect them. These calm years help the empire expand its reach, strengthen its borders, and build relationships with faraway regions. The empire's confidence rises, and people believe the imperial structure is working as planned. Wealth spreads across the empire during these peaceful years. Markets grow, ports fill with ships, and building projects continue across many provinces. Citizens see improvements in roads, aqueducts, and public spaces. The early emperors enjoy strong support because daily life feels predictable. Families settle, businesses grow, and people feel connected to a stable empire. This sense of progress builds pride in Roman identity and convinces many that the imperial system can guide them through changing times. Trouble forms when a later member of the ruling family behaves with little care for the responsibilities expected of an emperor. He ignores key issues, spends resources poorly, and creates tension within the Senate and the military. People grow uneasy about how quickly one person's choices can disrupt the empire. Whispers spread across Rome about whether the system is too vulnerable. These concerns signal the first serious warning that stability can break when leadership weakens. As this emperor's behavior grows more unpredictable, the palace becomes a place of fear and uncertainty. Advisors feel unsafe, officials avoid giving honest guidance, and the city senses the change. The emperor's actions reach levels that citizens find alarming. The structure created by Marcus Varian now seems at risk. Power turns into something uncontrolled, and people start watching for signs that the internal order may soon fall apart. Quiet tension spreads across the capital as Rome waits for what comes next. Plans begin forming among groups inside the palace. Key figures understand that waiting may lead to collapse. They look for ways to remove the unstable emperor without causing a full breakdown. This period shows how much influence small groups hold behind the scenes. Citizens notice guarded looks among officials and increased military presence around important buildings. Rome enters a period where leadership feels uncertain, and people wonder how long the empire can function under such chaos. A more controlled emperor takes power after the removal of his predecessor. He brings temporary calm and sets out to fix the damage done. He focuses on restoring trust among military leaders and senators. People feel some relief as order returns. He repairs parts of the administration and tries to bring stability back into focus. But even with these efforts, he cannot erase the memory of recent turmoil. Rome learns that strong leadership is not guaranteed. This new calm does not last long, as another ruler enters with decisions that shake the empire's balance. His choices weaken financial structures and cause arguments within the government. The army grows restless again, and citizens feel unsure about the direction of the empire. Small issues start forming into larger problems. The early confidence of Rome begins to fade, showing that the empire's strength depends heavily on each emperor's ability to maintain steady control. The new emperor's decisions strain Rome's finances. He approves projects that drain the treasury and cuts support for key defenses. Soldiers start questioning whether their efforts matter, and officials struggle to manage shrinking resources. Markets feel the pressure, and transportation becomes less reliable. People begin noticing delays in supplies that once moved smoothly across the empire. The structure Marcus Varian built now shows signs of weakening. These changes ripple through every layer of society, reminding citizens that leadership mistakes can spread far beyond the walls of the palace. A shift begins as military leaders observe the emperor's missteps and realize how much control they hold. With soldiers loyal to them, rather than the Senate, they gain influence. Some commanders start acting like decision-makers, rather than protectors, shaping politics through force. This change places power in the hands of individuals who may not share the same vision for Rome. Citizens grow uneasy as authority becomes less predictable. The empire, once centered around careful planning, starts leaning toward leaders who rely on strength rather than balanced judgment. Trust between Rome's people and its rulers weakens as mistakes accumulate. Citizens see officials make choices that seem unclear or risky, and they begin questioning whether the imperial system can keep them safe. Minor disputes turn into larger arguments within the government. Merchants, farmers, and families notice disruptions in everyday routines. Without strong direction, the empire feels less stable than before. People start recalling earlier years of calm and wonder if that stability can return. The shift in mood becomes noticeable across many regions. A major turning point rises as several factions push for more influence. Each group believes it can guide Rome better, yet none agree on how to move forward. Conflicts inside the palace create confusion among soldiers and citizens. The empire feels stretched between competing interests, with no clear path to unity. This moment sets the stage for greater struggles. People sense that Rome is entering a new phase where leadership is harder to maintain and internal disputes may shape the future in unpredictable ways. Rising uncertainty gives way to widespread tension. Generals, senators, and advisors all try to gain advantage as the emperor loses support. Rumors travel quickly, and every province watches for signs of change. Citizens feel unsure about who truly controls Rome. Without a stable leader, people worry about their safety and their future. Trade slows, border defenses weaken, and confusion spreads. This period becomes one of the most fragile the empire has experienced, showing how unstable things become when the center of power begins to slip. Several generals declare themselves as rightful rulers, each backed by loyal soldiers. Their claims fracture Rome further, dividing the empire into regions controlled by different armies. Regular citizens feel caught between competing forces, unsure whose orders to follow. Communities closest to military camps experience the most pressure as marching troops take supplies and impose their own rules. Rome's carefully built structure struggles to hold under so many competing leaders. Daily routines across the empire shift depending on which general's banner appears near their town. Clashes between these armies become common. Entire provinces turn into battlegrounds, as generals fight for control. Roads once used for trade now carry soldiers, and peaceful towns face sudden destruction. Families flee their homes, seeking shelter in areas that still feel somewhat stable. The empire becomes harder to manage as communication lines break down. These internal fights create new wounds that weaken Rome more than any outside threat. Citizens struggle under heavy demands, placed by competing leaders. Some generals seize food and money to support their campaigns, leaving communities with little to survive on. Local leaders attempt to negotiate with different armies to avoid destruction. Businesses close, farms are abandoned, and people move in search of safer regions. The empire's large size, once a strength, now becomes difficult to maintain, because no single leader controls its full territory. The lack of order changes everyday life for millions across Rome. One general emerges as the strongest and reaches the capital claiming victory over the others. He takes the throne and brings temporary order, but the scars of recent conflicts remain. Provinces damaged by fighting need rebuilding, and citizens expect the new emperor to fix problems quickly. Yet the new ruler finds it difficult to manage the deep issues left behind. Although he holds power, people question whether he can restore the confidence Rome once had. His rule becomes a brief pause rather than a full recovery. The new emperor tries to restore stability, but the problems run deeper than expected. With the treasury strained and loyalty uncertain, every decision becomes a challenge. Military payments are late, causing frustration among soldiers. Food prices rise, and trade routes remain risky. The emperor works hard to regain trust, but progress is slow. Citizens grow tired of constant changes in leadership. Rome enters a period where hope and doubt compete, and the fear of another collapse remains close as people wait for stronger direction. A new emperor rises with a clear plan to rebuild the empire's systems. He focuses on repairing the army, improving communication lines, and restoring trade. His reforms start to show results as soldiers regain confidence and merchants return to their routes. Markets reopen, and cities feel more secure. This renewed organization helps Rome regain strength. People respond positively to his structured approach, believing the empire may finally be stepping away from its earlier chaos. His leadership marks the beginning of a gradual recovery. Confidence grows as this emperor expands his reforms. He negotiates agreements with neighboring regions and strengthens alliances that had weakened during conflict years. Border defenses become more reliable, and supply routes remain open. Citizens notice calmer streets and more predictable access to food and work. The emperor's steady leadership helps people feel grounded again. His focus on practical improvements becomes a major reason the empire begins to stabilize. The memory of past turmoil still lingers, but the sense of forward movement encourages many. The emperor's success fuels expansion along key frontiers. New forts rise in strategic areas, and the military trains with stronger discipline. His careful planning leads to victories that strengthen Rome's reach. Distant provinces feel supported again and reconnect with the central government. Trade grows as safer routes bring goods from across the empire. These changes create a renewed sense of pride among citizens. People believe the empire might reclaim its earlier power if this momentum continues under consistent leadership. A sense of unity spreads across Rome. Public works continue, and cities benefit from improved water systems, storage facilities, and transportation networks. Citizens begin feeling part of something stable and productive. Festivals and markets regain energy as people experience fewer disruptions. The empire, once shaken by internal fights, now looks stronger. Confidence returns to farmers, traders, and families. The emperor's achievements show how effective leadership can rebuild even after severe damage. People trust the system again, believing their efforts contribute to a promising future. Rome's strength becomes visible across many regions. Soldiers maintain secure roads, allowing goods and people to travel safely. Governors work more closely with the emperor, creating smoother administration. Ports handle increased shipping, connecting Rome with distant markets. These conditions help rebuild wealth. The empire feels stable enough to plan further developments, rather than react to constant crises. People enjoy long periods of predictable life. Many believe the challenges of previous years are finally behind them, and Rome may continue rising under its restored leadership. An adoptive successor takes the throne, following the example set by the strong emperor before him. He continues many of the same approaches, maintaining discipline and focusing on fair administration. Citizens appreciate his predictable leadership style. The military respects him for supporting disciplined training and ensuring supplies reach the front lines. His steady rule reassures regions still recovering from earlier conflicts. Rome benefits from another leader who values structure and long-term planning. This continuation of stability strengthens the empire's identity. More successors follow, each chosen for their ability rather than inherited ties. This group becomes known for their fair decisions and clear thinking. They focus on improving governance, reinforcing frontiers, and managing resources well. Their combined efforts lead to a respected period in Rome's history. People trust these emperors to act with reason instead of personal ambition. This era is remembered as a time when good leadership produces real progress. Citizens see improvements in daily life and feel hopeful about future stability. Rome pushes its borders outward under these strong leaders. The military explores new territories, securing areas that once threatened the empire. Soldiers establish new outposts and ensure safe movement through rough terrain. Traders follow, bringing fresh goods and creating partnerships with faraway regions. These expansions extend Rome's influence across areas previously unreachable. Citizens celebrate victories and view the empire as a powerful force capable of shaping distant lands. The growth reinforces confidence in Rome's leadership and military organization. Under one emperor's rule, Rome reaches its largest size. Territories stretch across vast distances, creating a network of cultures connected by Roman systems. Roads link cities that once stood isolated, and ships travel between ports carrying goods and information. Citizens feel proud of the empire's reach, believing they are part of something unmatched in the world. This expansion requires strong administration, but the emperor manages its demands well. It becomes a defining moment where Rome stands at the height of its power. Building projects rise everywhere. Engineers design new roads, aqueducts, and public centers that strengthen daily life. Fortifications receive upgrades, helping secure distant provinces. Citizens see progress through these physical changes. Workers find steady jobs, and cities experience growth. These developments carry the empire forward, bringing practical benefits that reinforce unity. The empire's identity becomes visible not only through leadership, but through the structures people use every day. Such improvements help connect even the most distant regions more closely to Rome. The empire seems strong and nearly unstoppable during these years. The government functions smoothly, the military remains effective, and trade brings wealth from many regions. Citizens enjoy long periods of stability. They experience reliable access to resources, predictable leadership, and calm borders. People living across the empire feel connected through shared systems and common laws. This period represents one of Rome's brightest stages. Many believe the empire will continue on this path without facing major threats, as the foundations seem secure. A major shift occurs when a new ruler takes power without the experience needed to manage such a large empire. His lack of preparation becomes clear as decisions cause confusion. He struggles to coordinate with governors and military leaders. This creates delays in essential plans and weakens relationships with key regions. Citizens start noticing changes in the empire's efficiency. The difference between this ruler and those before him becomes evident, and people worry that Rome may be entering another vulnerable phase after years of progress. Pressure near the borders grows as neighboring groups sense weakness in Rome's leadership. Raids become more frequent, and soldiers find it difficult to respond effectively. The emperor's unclear direction prevents the military from organizing strong defenses. Towns near troubled areas face disruptions, and many people relocate for safety. The empire's size becomes harder to manage without a confident leader. This growing strain highlights how quickly outer regions can become unstable when the center loses coordination and control. New threats emerge as outside groups move closer to Roman lands. These groups form larger alliances and place pressure on border settlements. Rome struggles to maintain control, and local commanders take on more responsibility without clear guidance. Communication becomes difficult as problems appear in multiple areas at once. Citizens living near the edges of the empire experience more uncertainty. The emperor's limited response deepens concerns that Rome's strength may be slipping during a critical moment when unity is needed most. Signs of deeper issues push Rome toward another shift. Problems at the borders combine with weakened leadership and financial strain. People across the empire recognize that the comfortable stability of previous years is fading. Officials attempt to hold things together, but the pressure becomes harder to manage. The empire prepares to enter a new stage that will test its structure and resilience. Citizens wonder whether upcoming leaders will restore balance or allow the growing disorder to spread further across Rome's vast territories. Control over the military becomes harder as soldiers grow frustrated with shifting leadership and limited resources. Commanders struggle to maintain discipline when support from the capital feels inconsistent. Some units act independently, making decisions based on local needs rather than central orders. This change affects communication and weakens coordination across multiple frontiers. The sense of unity that once guided Rome's armies begins to fade as different regions handle threats in their own ways. The empire's stability becomes more fragile as the military's loyalty drifts away from the central government. Money problems start spreading across the empire. Inflation grows, trade slows, and the government struggles to meet obligations. Delayed payments to soldiers cause tension, and supply shortages make daily life harder for ordinary citizens. Even wealthy merchants feel the shift as transportation becomes less reliable. Officials attempt to stabilize the economy, but their efforts produce limited results. The empire's strength, once supported by steady finances, begins to weaken. These economic challenges add pressure to an already strained system, making it harder for leaders to address other growing threats. The Senate loses more influence, as emperors rely heavily on military support instead of shared governance. Senators feel sidelined and less involved in important decisions. Their ability to guide policy fades, and the political structure becomes increasingly unbalanced. This shift leaves fewer experienced voices, advising the emperor, creating a narrow decision-making circle. Citizens notice the decline in public debates and worry that the government no longer represents a wide range of perspectives. The concentration of power creates instability as fewer checks remain to control poor leadership. Emperors begin taking the throne for very short reigns, due to non-stop plotting inside the palace. Powerful groups remove rulers quickly when they disagree with decisions or see personal advantages. This constant turnover confuses the public, as new leaders arrive with different priorities and strategies. The empire feels like it is spinning without a clear direction. Soldiers struggle to follow changing orders, and citizens lose confidence in the system. Leadership becomes unpredictable, and the empire's identity weakens under the weight of constant internal battles. Rome enters a period known for its rapid rotation of emperors, each lasting only a brief time before being replaced. Some are overthrown by rivals, others fall victim to palace conspiracies, and a few cannot handle the pressure of leading a declining empire. With leadership shifting constantly, long-term plans become impossible. Every region feels the confusion as governors try to determine which ruler to obey. This era demonstrates how fragile the imperial system becomes when authority changes too quickly to build stability. Groups living beyond Rome's frontiers take advantage of the weakened leadership. They push into Roman lands, raiding towns and testing defenses. Border forces struggle to respond effectively due to limited supplies and unclear direction from the capital. Families in frontier regions face disruptions and often move inward to safer areas. Local leaders do their best to protect communities, but the growing pressure reveals how vulnerable the empire has become. Threats from the outside begin shaping the future more strongly than decisions made inside Rome. Towns near borders experience growing disruptions. Markets close as merchants fear unsafe roads, and farms suffer from damaged fields caused by repeated raids. The stability of outer provinces fades, pushing families to abandon their homes. As these regions weaken, the empire loses valuable resources and territory. Without steady leadership or coordinated military responses, the situation grows harder to control. People living near the frontiers feel disconnected from Rome, wondering whether the capital can still protect them during these difficult years. A new emperor rises with a goal to strengthen defenses. He focuses on repairing walls, organizing patrols, and assigning experienced officers to risky regions. His efforts bring temporary relief to border towns. Some areas see a decrease in raids, and people feel slightly more secure. However, the scale of damage across the empire makes full recovery challenging. Despite progress, the emperor faces limits due to financial strain and ongoing political tension. His attempts highlight both the importance and difficulty of protecting Rome's vast borders. The emperor works to keep vital roads open, knowing trade and communication rely on safe routes. He sends teams to repair damaged sections and stations guards at key points. These steps help restore movement between cities. Merchants return cautiously, and supplies begin flowing again. Citizens appreciate these improvements, though they remain aware of the instability surrounding them. The emperor's efforts show how essential infrastructure is to maintaining unity, even during troubled times. These roads become lifelines connecting Rome's regions. Despite the emperor's efforts, the army becomes restless due to inconsistent pay and difficult conditions. Soldiers serving in remote areas feel overlooked and frustrated. Commanders report rising discipline issues, and some units operate with little guidance. The emperor tries to reassure them by sending whatever resources he can spare, but shortages continue. This tension weakens Rome's ability to control its borders. Without a fully reliable army, the empire struggles to maintain order in areas that need strong protection the most. Another ambitious general seizes the opportunity to claim the throne. Backed by loyal troops, he marches to the capital and gains control over the empire. His rise reflects Rome's growing pattern of military power, shaping political leadership. Once in power, he attempts to reorganize the government and restore confidence in the army. People hope his energy will bring stability, but many remain cautious, unsure whether another quick change in leadership will help or create more problems. The new emperor introduces reforms to fix the strained economy. He adjusts tax systems, reorganizes markets, and encourages new trade partnerships. While some regions respond well, others resist the changes. His policies take time to show results, but early signs suggest improvement. Citizens notice slight increases in available goods and more stable prices in certain areas. Despite challenges, the emperor's efforts demonstrate that strong, practical planning can help recover parts of the economy. Still, the empire faces many obstacles that require careful management. Economic trouble continues as the empire tries to recover. Basic goods cost more, and some regions struggle with shortages. Officials attempt to distribute resources fairly, but limited supplies make it difficult. Citizens adapt by planting more local crops and relying on nearby markets instead of long-distance trade. The emperor faces pressure from multiple sides, needing to balance military funding with public needs. These financial challenges remain a constant threat to Rome's ability to maintain stability across its territories. New fortification lines are built to strengthen vulnerable areas. Engineers design walls and lookout posts intended to slow down invaders and protect key roads. These projects provide jobs for workers and boost confidence among residents near troubled borders. Although the fortifications help, they cannot solve deeper issues affecting the empire. The growing number of threats and the difficulty of defending such a large territory show how stretched Rome has become. Still, these defensive efforts reflect a determination to hold on to remaining strength. People from outer regions move towards safer interior areas. They bring stories of destroyed farms, empty villages, and harsh conditions. Cities become crowded as families search for shelter and work. Local leaders struggle to support the growing population. Despite the challenges, many communities try to help newcomers adjust. These migrations reshape the population, creating new mixings of cultures, but also increasing pressure on limited resources. The movement shows how instability in border areas affects the entire empire. Wars in multiple regions drain supplies faster than they can be replaced. Armies consume food, equipment, and manpower at a high rate. The constant fighting leaves little time for recovery. Workers who once supported farming and craftsmanship are pulled into military service, causing shortages in other areas. These strains make it harder for the empire to respond quickly to new threats. With fewer resources available, leaders struggle to balance defense and daily governance. The challenges become more visible throughout the provinces. A new emperor arrives with a bold plan for large-scale change. He reorganizes provinces, introduces new administrative rules, and attempts to streamline government operations. His ideas focus on controlling the empire more efficiently by adjusting how regions report to the capital. While some areas benefit from clearer management, others struggle with the sudden changes. Officials require time to adapt, creating confusion in the early stages. The emperor hopes his reforms will strengthen Rome, but the impact depends on how well these changes are implemented. The emperor's provincial reorganization begins taking shape. Regions gain new boundaries to improve administration, and local leaders receive more defined roles. Some governors welcome the clarity, while others resist losing influence. Citizens experience the changes through updated tax systems and revised legal processes. Although intended to bring order, the reforms create mixed reactions. The empire continues adjusting as leaders evaluate which parts of the new system work well and which create new problems that require attention. Some of the emperor's reforms improve communication and help certain areas operate more smoothly. Other decisions cause delays or confusion, especially in regions unfamiliar with the new rules. The mixed outcomes show how difficult it is to reorganize such a large empire. Citizens try to understand the shifting expectations, and officials work to correct mistakes. While progress exists, the empire still feels the weight of earlier conflicts and economic pressure. These reforms show both the promise and the limits of structural changes during troubled times. Rome prepares for a major shift, as leaders recognize the growing strain on the empire. The idea of dividing responsibilities becomes more appealing as one central government struggles to manage all regions effectively. Conversations begin about how to split control in a way that strengthens both halves. Citizens wonder what this change might mean for their future. The empire stands on the edge of a transformation that will reshape leadership, influence, and identity across its vast territories. The concept of dividing the empire becomes official. Rome is split into eastern and western halves, each ruled by its own emperor. This division aims to make governing easier and more efficient across the large territory. The eastern half gains control over wealthier regions with strong trade connections, while the western half handles territories closer to troubled borders. Citizens adapt to the idea of two leaders sharing responsibility. Although designed to improve management, the new structure brings challenges as both halves learn to operate independently while still remaining part of the same empire. The division is presented as a solution to the empire's struggles. By splitting responsibilities, leaders hope to respond more quickly to regional issues. Eastern leaders focus on trade and culture, building strong defenses in prosperous cities. Western leaders deal with military threats and frontier challenges. The separation highlights differences between the halves, but also creates opportunities for more focused governance. Citizens remain cautious, unsure whether this new arrangement will strengthen Rome or expose deeper problems that unity once concealed. Two emperors now share control, each responsible for guiding their side of the empire. They coordinate policies when possible, but face unique challenges in their regions. The East enjoys wealth from busy markets and long-established cities. The West deals with constant pressure from outside groups and internal instability. Cooperation between the two emperors becomes essential, yet difficult due to distance and differing priorities. While the division aims to bring balance, it also reveals how differently the two halves experience daily life. Differences between the eastern and western halves become clearer. The East benefits from rich trade routes and strong city walls, allowing it to focus on culture, learning, and long-term planning. The West lacks the same financial stability and battles frequent invasions. As a result, Western regions struggle to recover from earlier damage. Citizens in both halves feel the contrast in daily life. The East grows more confident, while the West faces ongoing uncertainty. This imbalance begins shaping the empire's long-term future. The first Eastern emperor strengthens his territories by investing in solid defenses and organized administration. He improves city walls, builds storage facilities, and supports local leaders who maintain order. His efforts help the East remain stable even as the West faces increasing problems. Eastern citizens enjoy safer communities and more reliable trade. The emperor's focus on infrastructure creates a strong foundation for future rulers. His leadership highlights how the East adapts more effectively during challenging times, positioning it as the more resilient half of the divided empire. The Western emperor struggles with constant pressure along the borders. He must divide limited troops across many regions, leaving some areas exposed. Towns near the frontiers send requests for help, but responses come slowly due to stretched resources. Roads are unsafe, and communication takes longer than expected. Citizens feel the strain as raids disrupt farming and trade. Meanwhile, the East operates with greater stability, highlighting the growing gap between the two halves. The Western emperor tries to keep order, but the challenges around him continue building. The eastern half grows stronger as its cities expand, and trade routes remain active. Markets stay busy, supporting a steady flow of goods and income. Leaders invest in shipyards, workshops, and administrative centers. The strong economy allows Eastern emperors to maintain well-equipped defenses and reinforce important locations. People living in the East experience more predictable routines and better access to resources. The stability helps the region withstand outside threats more effectively than the West. This growing advantage slowly shifts the balance of influence between the two halves. The western half becomes overwhelmed by political battles. Groups within the government argue over priorities, and disagreements delay important decisions. Some officials push for stronger military action, while others urge negotiation. With the empire facing constant invasions, every delay adds to the pressure. Citizens grow frustrated as leadership changes frequently, and plans remain unfinished. The West struggles to find a consistent direction, and its inability to act quickly leaves many vulnerable regions unprotected. This prolonged uncertainty fuels further decline. New groups migrate toward Roman territory, searching for land and security. Some hope to settle peacefully, while others arrive in large numbers that overwhelm local defenses. These movements place enormous strain on Western regions already struggling to maintain order. Villages experience sudden population increases, forcing limited supplies to stretch even further. Roman leaders attempt to manage the situation, but their efforts often fall short. The arrival of new groups reshapes the Western landscape, creating challenges that the weakened government finds difficult to manage. Roman armies in the West stretch themselves thin across long and exposed borders. Commanders must choose which areas to defend and which to abandon temporarily. These choices leave several towns unprotected and vulnerable. Soldiers face exhaustion, and supply carts arrive late or not at all. The wide territory becomes harder to patrol, giving outside groups more freedom to push deeper into Roman lands. Citizens feel the effects through disrupted harvests, closed markets, and damaged property. The empire's once reliable defenses now operate under constant strain. A Western emperor attempts to rebuild alliances with neighboring groups to secure temporary peace. He sends envoys to negotiate agreements, hoping to reduce pressure on the borders. Some negotiations succeed, providing short-term relief, while others fail due to mistrust or conflicting interests. Although these efforts help certain regions, they cannot fully repair the damage caused by years of instability. The emperor's attempts show the desperate need for cooperation, but his limited resources and diminishing authority make it hard to maintain lasting agreements that ensure safety. Loyalties within the Western Empire shift unpredictably. Some military units support the emperor, while others form their own alliances based on local interests. Governors in distant regions begin making independent decisions to protect their territories. This fractured structure weakens the emperor's influence, allowing rival leaders to challenge authority. Citizens notice the lack of coordination and feel confused about whether their emperor still holds real control. The sense of unity that once defined Rome continues to decline as loyalty becomes tied to survival rather than allegiance. In the East, leaders focus on strengthening culture, education, and long-lasting defenses. Scholars document laws and refine administrative systems. Architects design buildings that enhance city life, and trade centers grow more active. Strong city walls protect communities and allow people to continue routines without major disruption. The Eastern Empire uses its stability to invest in long-term projects that reinforce identity and pride. These efforts create a strong foundation that supports future rulers and keeps the region more resilient than its Western counterpart. Eastern cities thrive as trade networks connect them with distant markets. Ships arrive carrying spices, metals, cloth, and grains, bringing wealth to ports and inland towns. Merchants travel safely along major roads due to reliable patrols. Workshops produce goods that reach across the Mediterranean. While the East builds economic strength, the West loses ground. The difference becomes clear to anyone moving between regions. The East appears vibrant and coordinated, while the West struggles with shortages and weakened leadership. This contrast shapes the future of the divided empire. A strong Eastern emperor steps forward with a vision of improving administration and reinforcing the empire's core systems. He introduces clearer rules for governors and strengthens the central government's role in managing resources. His leadership ensures that tax collection, legal processes, and military planning operate smoothly. Citizens experience more consistency, and officials receive better guidance. The emperor's organized approach helps stabilize the eastern half during a time when the West faces continuous decline. His efforts position the East as the stronger part of the empire. The East adapts more successfully to changing threats due to its strong economy and reliable defenses. It adjusts troop placements quickly and secures key locations before problems escalate. Leaders use diplomacy to prevent conflicts where possible, saving resources for emergencies. The combination of smart planning and stable leadership helps the region withstand challenges that overwhelm the West. This adaptability becomes one of the East's greatest strengths, allowing it to continue functioning even as the overall empire faces rising pressure from many directions. The western half loses control of several provinces, as local leaders can no longer defend against outside pressures. These regions break away or fall under new rulers. Once important Roman towns become isolated and struggle to maintain order. The loss of territory weakens the empire's influence and reduces access to resources needed for survival. Citizens who remain feel abandoned and uncertain about their future. Each lost province reflects the growing collapse of Western stability, creating a chain reaction that becomes harder to stop. People flee unstable Western regions in search of safety within the remaining Roman territory. Entire families travel with whatever they can carry, moving away from burned farms and abandoned settlements. Cities inside the empire become crowded as newcomers arrive in large numbers. Local resources are stretched thin, but residents try to help where possible. These migrations reshape communities and create new social challenges. The movement reflects the collapse of once secure areas and highlights the difficulty of maintaining unity in the shrinking Western Empire. Western emperors struggle to gather enough resources to manage the growing crisis. Taxes bring in less revenue due to lost territories and damaged farms. The military demands more supplies than the treasury can provide. The emperor attempts to ration materials, but shortages continue. Officials scramble to find solutions, yet few options remain. Citizens feel the shortages in daily life as food, tools, and goods become harder to find. The strain on resources becomes a defining feature of the West's continued decline. The West faces a slow collapse as political instability, economic strain, and external pressures combine. Each problem influences the next, creating a system that becomes harder to repair. Citizens lose trust in leadership, and regions drift further apart. Even with some temporary improvements, the overall direction remains downward. The eastern half observes the situation with concern, knowing the collapse of the West will affect the entire Roman world in some way. The empire enters a stage where survival becomes uncertain for many. New Western emperors come to power, but their reigns remain brief due to non-stop challenges. Many are chosen by military leaders, rather than through structured succession. Without time to establish authority, these emperors struggle to make lasting changes. The rapid turnover confuses provinces already under stress. Citizens grow frustrated as no leader remains long enough to address problems properly. This pattern reinforces the decline of central control and deepens the sense that the West cannot regain its earlier strength. Groups once considered outside Rome now settle inside former Roman lands. Some integrate peacefully, taking over empty towns or forming agreements with local leaders. Others push deeper into the empire through force. These settlements change the cultural and political landscape of the West. Roman identity becomes mixed with new customs and leadership styles. The presence of these groups highlights the empire's weakened ability to control its own territory. This shift marks a major change in the Western half's structure and influence. Western emperors depend heavily on foreign troops to fill the gaps in their army. These soldiers play important roles in defending key regions, but their loyalty varies. Some support the emperor, while others serve their own leaders or look for personal advantage. This reliance on outside forces creates tension within the military. Roman soldiers feel sidelined, and commanders struggle to manage the diverse groups. The growing dependence on foreign troops shows how much the empire has changed and how far it has drifted from earlier stability. The mixed structure of the Western military weakens unity even further. Foreign troops often follow their own traditions and respond differently to orders. Conflicts arise between units, slowing Rome's ability to respond to threats. Commanders try to keep control but face resistance from soldiers who feel no strong connection to the emperor. This fractured military makes it easier for outside groups to advance. Citizens witness the decline in discipline and worry that the empire cannot defend them effectively anymore. Key cities in the West begin falling due to limited defenses and internal problems. Once strong urban centers become vulnerable as walls crumble, supplies diminish, and leadership falters. Some cities surrender to avoid destruction, while others are taken through force. These losses damage trade routes and communication lines, making it harder for the empire to function. Citizens feel the impact immediately, as safety declines and relocation becomes a common choice. Each fallen city represents another step toward the West's collapse. Farms across the West are abandoned as fighting spreads and raiders destroy fields. Without enough farmers, food production drops sharply. Supplies in cities run low, and prices rise. Hungry families struggle to survive. and some turned to migration in search of better conditions. The decline of agriculture affects the entire economy, reducing the empire's ability to support its military. The once fertile lands that fueled Rome's growth now struggle to produce enough for basic survival, deepening the crisis. A Western emperor attempts to restore discipline by reorganizing the military and improving fortifications. He tries to motivate soldiers by increasing training and repairing damaged structures. His efforts produce small victories in certain regions, offering brief relief. Citizens appreciate these improvements, but many recognize that the empire needs more than isolated successes. Despite his determination, the emperor faces too many challenges at once. His attempts highlight the difficulty of reversing such widespread decline with limited resources and support. Some regions see successful defenses under this emperor, giving people hope. Small victories help secure a few towns and slow the advance of invading groups. However, these achievements cannot match the scale of the ongoing crisis. As other areas fall, the gains feel temporary. Citizens struggle to stay optimistic when the overall direction of the West continues downward. The emperor's efforts show that determination still exists, but the problems facing Rome have grown too large to solve with scattered improvements. Power in the West shifts toward military leaders who control large groups of soldiers. These commanders hold more influence than the emperors, shaping decisions based on their own interests. Their authority grows as emperors lose control. Some protect their regions effectively, while others pursue personal gain. This shift weakens the idea of central leadership and contributes to the West's fragmentation. Citizens see military leaders acting independently and question whether the emperor still has any real power in guiding the empire. The imperial title in the West becomes symbolic as real authority moves elsewhere. The emperor holds the position but lacks control over many regions. Military leaders, governors and outside groups shape daily life more than the ruler in the capital. This symbolic role highlights how far the West has fallen from its earlier strength. Citizens accept that the emperor cannot influence events in meaningful ways. The weakening of the title marks one of the final stages of the Western Empire's decline, signaling that its end may be near. The final Western emperor rises to the throne at a young age, placed in power more as a figure than a leader. He inherits an empire already weakened by years of conflict, shortages, and political chaos. Advisors attempt to guide him, but their influence is limited due to the growing control of military commanders. Citizens see him as a quiet symbol rather than someone who can bring real change. His rule highlights how fragile the Western half has become, with most decisions shaped by forces outside the imperial palace. The young emperor holds little authority, and his presence does not change the direction of the declining West. Military commanders act independently, and officials in distant regions rarely follow orders from the capital. Citizens look for guidance, but receive few clear answers. The emperor's limited experience becomes evident as problems escalate faster than he can respond. The empire's structure continues weakening, and many realize the imperial office no longer carries real power. This situation sets the stage for the final shift that will end Western rule. A powerful military commander steps forward and removes the young emperor from the throne. The transition occurs with little resistance, as most regions already follow local authorities rather than the central government. The commander decides that maintaining an emperor no longer serves any purpose. He takes control and sends a message across the remaining territories that the old system has reached its final point. Citizens who once relied on the imperial institution accept the change, knowing the structure had been failing for years. The removal of the last Western emperor marks the official end of the Western Roman Empire. No successor is appointed, and the imperial title is abandoned in the West. Regions adjust to this new reality by following local leaders or foreign rulers who have settled within the former empire's borders. The disappearance of the Western throne feels significant, yet many people saw the collapse forming long before this moment. What once represented strength and unity now becomes a memory of a system that could not withstand its growing challenges. Across the remaining Roman world, news of the fall spreads quickly. Eastern leaders acknowledge the collapse, but focus on maintaining stability within their own territory. Citizens in the East react with concern, but also with a sense of distance. They understand that the West faced unique problems they have managed to avoid. The fall becomes a reminder of the importance of strong leadership, reliable defenses, and organized administration. While the West fades from the imperial structure, the East continues carrying the identity of Rome. The Eastern Empire absorbs the reality that it now stands as the only remaining part of Rome. Its leaders take on the responsibility of preserving laws, traditions, and systems that once spanned across continents. citizens feel a renewed sense of duty to protect their cities from the problems that destroyed the West. The government works to reinforce stability by maintaining strong defenses and improving administrative processes. The East becomes the guardian of Roman culture, seeing itself as the rightful continuation of the empire's long legacy. With the West gone, the Eastern Empire strengthens its identity and focuses on maintaining unity. Leaders emphasize the importance of order and efficient governance, knowing how quickly decline can spread when neglected. Citizens support these efforts by contributing to local improvements and respecting established laws. The empire adapts by concentrating its resources on essential areas. While the loss of the West remains significant, the East manages to stay organized and prepare for future challenges. Its continued survival reflects the strength of its systems and leadership. Constantinople becomes the main center of Roman rule, carrying the authority once shared with the Western capital. The city grows with renewed purpose, acting as the heart of an empire determined to endure. Its location supports trade, diplomacy, and defense. Markets stay active, and ships from many regions arrive with valuable goods. Leaders rely on the city's strategic advantages to guide the empire through changing times. Constantinople stands as a symbol of resilience, showing how the East maintains strength while the West has disappeared. Eastern rulers maintain Roman traditions by upholding laws, supporting learning, and preserving cultural practices. Officials work to keep administration efficient, and scholars document important records. The empire continues operating with clear structure, unlike the turmoil once seen in the West. Citizens benefit from stability and consistent leadership. The preservation of Roman ideals in the East becomes a defining characteristic, keeping the empire connected to its origins even as it faces new challenges. This continuity helps strengthen the identity of the remaining Roman world. The Eastern Empire begins shaping a new identity that blends Roman tradition with local customs. Its architecture, art, and daily life reflect this mix. The capital grows into a unique center of culture, drawing visitors from many regions. The empire adjusts its systems to suit the changing world while holding on to the essence of Roman rule. This evolution helps it stay relevant and strong. Citizens recognize that although the West has fallen, the East remains a living continuation of Rome's long history, prepared to face future tests. Constantinople strengthens its role as a major power by improving its defenses. Leaders invest in stronger walls, gates, and strategic towers. These projects protect the city from growing pressures in surrounding regions. The attention to security allows markets and neighborhoods to thrive inside the capital. Citizens feel supported by the careful planning, and the population grows. The city's strong defenses become one of its greatest advantages, helping the empire withstand challenges that could otherwise disrupt daily life. These improvements shape Constantinople into a fortress capable of surviving major threats. Trade routes around the Eastern Empire remain active, bringing wealth and goods that support various communities. Leaders maintain strong relationships with neighboring regions, allowing merchants to travel safely. This steady flow of trade helps balance the economy and fund important projects. Ports stay busy with ships from distant markets, and workers in the city benefit from new opportunities. Citizens rely on these connections to access supplies, and the empire gains influence through its broad commercial reach. This economic strength becomes a key reason the East continues to stand firm. The Eastern Empire faces rising pressure from nearby kingdoms that grow stronger and more organized. These groups test Roman borders and look for opportunities to expand their influence. Leaders in Constantinople monitor these developments closely, adjusting strategies to prevent losses. The empire must stay alert to avoid falling into the same difficulties that weaken the West. Citizens hear reports of conflicts on distant frontiers, reminding them that Rome's survival depends on careful planning and reliable defenses. The growing threats require steady leadership. Waves of conflict hit different parts of the Eastern Empire, pushing leaders to rethink how they allocate their resources. Some regions require immediate attention, while others need long-term planning. Soldiers move between areas to reinforce vulnerable points. These actions help slow the advance of hostile forces, but they also strain the empire's capabilities. Citizens in affected regions adapt to changing conditions, often adjusting their routines to stay safe. The empire manages to stay intact through careful coordination, but the challenges show no signs of stopping. The Eastern Empire forms new alliances with distant regions to strengthen its position. These partnerships help protect trade routes and provide additional support during conflicts. Diplomats work to maintain cooperation, understanding that strong relationships can prevent future threats. Merchants benefit from expanded markets, and citizens gain access to goods they rely on. Although the empire still faces difficulties, These alliances offer valuable stability. The connections also highlight the East's ability to adapt and build support beyond its traditional borders, giving it more resilience. A capable emperor rises with a clear focus on restoring lands previously lost during earlier conflicts. He plans military campaigns carefully, targeting regions where success seems most achievable. His leadership brings renewed optimism as soldiers regain ground and re-establish control over important territories. Citizens appreciate the sense of progress after years of uncertainty. The emperor's approach shows that strategic planning can make a significant difference, helping the empire recover from setbacks. These accomplishments demonstrate the ongoing strength of the eastern half. This emperor continues improving Rome's position by strengthening fortifications and organizing military units more efficiently. He works closely with generals who understand the challenges faced in different regions. His attention to detail and careful planning ensure that resources are used effectively. Families living near vulnerable areas feel more secure as defenses improve. The emperor's commitment to stability encourages confidence across the empire. His leadership becomes a model for how to handle ongoing pressure from surrounding powers. Growth in art, law, and learning becomes a defining feature of the Eastern Empire during this period. Scholars create new works, while preserving older texts, and craftsmen produce detailed pieces that reflect the region's blended culture. Legal experts refine important systems that help manage daily life across diverse communities. Citizens participate in cultural events and benefit from improved public services. These developments show that despite external threats, the empire remains focused on progress. The strength of these contributions reinforces the identity of the Eastern Empire as a center of knowledge and craftsmanship. Constantinople becomes known for its wealth due to its strategic location and active trade. Markets fill with goods from across Europe, Asia, and the Mediterranean. The city's economy thrives as merchants, sailors, and officials work together to keep goods moving. Citizens enjoy a wide variety of products that support comfortable living conditions. The empire uses this economic success to fund defenses and maintain essential infrastructure. The prosperity helps strengthen morale and maintain stability even during difficult times, contributing to the empire's long-lasting endurance. Throughout these years, the empire maintains its Roman identity by preserving core structures and values. Leaders continue honoring traditional systems, ensuring that laws and administration remain consistent with earlier centuries. Citizens take pride in these connections to their past. The preservation of Roman culture becomes a central part of life in Constantinople, reinforcing the idea that the empire still stands strong despite the fall of the West. This commitment to tradition helps unite people across diverse regions under a shared heritage. Pressure around the Eastern Empire increases as powerful forces rise across nearby regions. These groups strengthen their armies, build alliances, and look toward Roman territory with growing interest. Eastern leaders recognize that defending their borders requires more resources than before. They adjust troop placements, reinforce strategic points, and monitor every movement near their frontiers. Citizens hear frequent reports of tensions that demand constant attention. The empire understands that survival now depends on preparation and careful planning, as the world surrounding them changes faster than ever. A skilled emperor works to repair damage caused by repeated conflicts. He directs resources toward rebuilding damaged towns, restoring roads, and improving supply lines. His leadership focuses on giving communities stability after years of uncertainty. Citizens appreciate the steady improvements and feel encouraged by the renewed sense of order. These efforts help the empire remain functional, despite ongoing threats. The emperor's practical approach supports long-term strength and allows people to continue their routines with fewer interruptions. His rule becomes a reminder that determined leadership can keep the empire steady. The empire continues surviving due to the strength of Constantinople, whose walls and defenses remain unmatched. The city becomes the primary shield protecting the Roman world from stronger outside powers. Its location allows leaders to control key trade routes and maintain influence over important regions. Citizens living inside the capital rely on its solid structure and deep resources. While the empire's territory shrinks, the capital stands firm, acting as the final anchor holding the Roman identity together as surrounding lands face turbulence. Pressure from multiple directions intensifies, leaving the empire surrounded by rivals with growing ambition. Trade becomes harder to protect, and distant provinces struggle to hold their ground. Leaders in Constantinople work to keep communication open and secure whatever resources remain. Citizens understand that the empire's future depends on the strength of the capital and the ability to manage limited supplies. every decision becomes important as the empire balances between survival and collapse. The challenges grow heavier with each passing year. As centuries pass, survival becomes the central focus of Eastern leadership. The empire no longer aims to expand, but instead concentrates on securing the lands it still controls. Leaders strengthen defenses, improve storage systems, and prepare for potential invasions. Citizens grow accustomed to living with caution, knowing the world beyond their walls has changed. The capital carries the weight of the entire Roman legacy. People realize that every effort made during these years determines whether their empire will endure or fall like the West did generations earlier. New rising powers gather near the empire, organizing armies capable of launching large attacks. Their ambitions to claim valuable lands include interest in Constantinople, whose wealth and position make it a prime target. Eastern leaders track these movements and prepare for the possibility of a major conflict. Citizens understand the seriousness of the threat as soldiers reinforce key locations. The empire faces a world where old alliances have faded and new forces dominate the region, creating an environment filled with unpredictable challenges. Financial strain grows as the empire struggles to maintain strong defenses. Funds that once supported multiple regions now barely cover the cost of protecting the capital. Leaders make difficult decisions about where to allocate limited resources. Taxes increase, and some services decline, placing more stress on citizens. Military units operate with fewer supplies, and repairs on older structures take longer to complete. The empire must stretch every coin to keep its walls standing. The financial pressure becomes one of the biggest obstacles to the empire's survival. The empire's borders shrink, until only a small collection of territories remains under Roman control. These lands face constant threats, and maintaining them becomes harder each year. Leaders focus on protecting trade routes that bring essential goods to the capital. Citizens live with the knowledge that their world has narrowed significantly. The shrinking borders reflect the growing challenge of defending an empire surrounded by powerful forces. Despite the reduced territory, the sense of Roman identity stays strong among those who remain loyal to Constantinople. Constantinople becomes isolated, as surrounding lands fall under different rulers. Trade routes that once connected the empire to distant markets now pass through regions controlled by rivals. The city relies heavily on its fortified walls and stored supplies to withstand long periods of tension. Citizens prepare for shortages, and understand that help from outside allies may not arrive. The empire's isolation creates a sense of vulnerability but also strengthens determination. People recognize that the responsibility to preserve Roman heritage rests almost entirely on their city. The city depends on its famous triple walls, strong gates, and strategic towers to resist threats. Engineers inspect structures, repair weak points, and prepare defensive machines. Citizens contribute by gathering supplies and reinforcing storage areas. Leaders emphasize discipline and unity, knowing a strong city can survive even with limited territory. The defenses become a symbol of strength, admired by those who believe Constantinople can endure against overwhelming odds. These preparations show the city's deep understanding of what must be done to protect the last center of Roman power. The final generation of emperors works tirelessly to preserve what remains of the empire. They negotiate diplomatically, mend older alliances where possible, and search for support from distant powers. Their efforts show a commitment to protecting the city, despite limited resources. Citizens respect their determination, even when results fall short due to outside obstacles. These emperors understand the importance of maintaining stability during the empire's most vulnerable years. Their actions reflect a strong desire to prevent the Roman legacy from disappearing under mounting pressure. Leaders attempt to secure assistance from neighboring regions, hoping to build alliances that can strengthen defenses. Messages are sent across seas and through risky land routes. Some rulers express interest but are distracted by their own conflicts, leaving Constantinople without firm commitments. The lack of solid support forces the empire to rely mostly on itself. Citizens feel disappointment, but continue preparing for the challenges ahead. These near-missed alliances show how difficult it becomes for a shrinking empire to gather help when larger powers dominate the region. Potential allies hesitate to fully commit due to political uncertainty and the risk of angering stronger neighboring powers. Some promise supplies but delay sending them, while others offer verbal support without action. This hesitation leaves the empire without the reinforcement it desperately needs. Citizens understand that they must depend on their own strength, rather than waiting for outside help. Leaders focus on strengthening internal defenses and preparing for the worst, knowing the city may soon face an attack without the backing of promised allies. The forces surrounding Constantinople, gather for a major campaign. Reports confirm that a large assault is being organized, bringing together troops, siege weapons and commanders, determined to take the city. Eastern leaders prepare for a decisive conflict, knowing the fate of the empire depends on this moment. Citizens work alongside soldiers to ready supplies, reinforce structures, and organize safe areas. The city braces for a confrontation that may determine whether the Roman world endures or falls to the rising power pressing against its walls. Preparations intensify as the final siege approaches. Soldiers gather along the walls, test defensive equipment, and coordinate positions for the long struggle ahead. Citizens organize food stores and help transport materials to protect vulnerable areas. The sense of urgency grows as the enemy moves closer. Leaders hold strategic meetings to determine how to allocate limited troops across the massive defenses. Constantinople enters a state of full readiness, knowing every section of the wall must hold if the city is to survive what lies ahead. The siege begins with relentless pressure on the city's defenses. Enemy forces test the walls with siege engines, tunneling efforts, and constant attacks. Soldiers inside the city rotate positions to manage exhaustion, while citizens support them by delivering supplies and repairing damaged structures. Smoke, noise, and movement fill the areas near the fortifications as both sides push their limits. The defenders show courage despite limited numbers. The Empire understands that this battle will determine its future, creating a unified effort to hold every part of the wall. Days of fighting turn into weeks. As the defenders try to keep pace with repeated assaults, the attackers test different parts of the city, forcing soldiers to shift quickly and reinforce weakened sections. Repairs happen constantly, as walls suffer damage from heavy impacts. Citizens continue assisting wherever they can, making the defense a combined effort between military and civilian groups. Supplies run lower, and exhaustion grows, but the determination to hold the city remains strong. Constantinople fights with every resource available to prevent a final breach. Key breaches open in the outer defenses as the enemy increases pressure. Soldiers rush to fill gaps with wooden barriers, stones, and anything sturdy enough to hold back the assault. The city becomes a tense landscape of repairs and urgent movements. Leaders coordinate responses to keep defenders organized. Citizens join in carrying materials and supporting critical tasks. Despite their efforts, the damage spreads faster than it can be repaired. The empire reaches a breaking point as pressure mounts across multiple sections of the wall. The final emperor leads from the front, moving through the streets to support defenders and encourage coordination. His presence inspires both soldiers and citizens during the most difficult moments. He personally oversees critical areas and directs reinforcements where they are needed most. Despite the danger, he remains committed to protecting Constantinople until the very last moment. His leadership represents the final expression of Roman duty, showing a deep connection to the empire he is fighting to preserve. The city draws strength from his determination. The walls eventually give way as enemy forces break through key points. Defenders fight with everything they have, but the attackers overwhelm the remaining structures. Chaos spreads through the streets as resistance continues in smaller groups. Citizens seek safety while helping however they can. The emperor stands with his soldiers during the last moments of defense. The fall of the walls marks the collapse of the final barrier protecting the Roman world. The city that stood for centuries can no longer withstand the overwhelming pressure surrounding it. The fall of Constantinople marks a turning point that reshapes the region. With the city captured, the Roman Empire reaches its end after more than 1,000 years of influence. The new rulers take control of the capital, and surviving citizens face a transformed future. The world outside recognizes the significance of this event, as a major center of history, culture, and power is absorbed into a rising force. The collapse signals the close of an era that shaped countless societies across continents. The end of the empire carries a sense of finality for its people. They reflect on the long journey that began with strong leaders, remarkable achievements, and a unified world under Roman influence. Although the empire has fallen, many take pride in the endurance that allowed it to survive far longer than expected. The city becomes quiet, as residents face the reality of the new rule. The weight of the moment settles across Constantinople, marking the close of the world they once knew. Even though the empire falls, Roman systems, laws, and ideas continue influencing many future societies. Scholars preserve texts, rulers adopt administrative methods, and traditions spread far beyond the old borders. The identity of Rome carries forward in multiple regions, shaping governments and cultures long after the capital's fall. The endurance of these ideas shows how deeply the empire impacted the world. The collapse of Constantinople ends Roman rule, but not the influence born from centuries of leadership, innovation, and shared identity. The story returns to the early days of the empire, when its first emperor guided Rome out of a broken republic and into a new era. The rise, growth, challenges, and final fall form a complete timeline shaped by leaders whose decisions influenced millions. Each emperor contributed in ways that pushed Rome towards strength or decline. This long series of rulers defines one of history's most enduring chapters. Their combined actions created a legacy that continues shaping modern understanding of leadership, power, and civilization. The timeline of Roman emperors from 27 BC to 1453 AD tells a sweeping story of rise, dominance, crisis, resilience, and final collapse. From the first emperor who brought unity to the last, who defended the city walls, each ruler left a mark on the empire's path. The fall of Constantinople closes the final chapter of this journey, but the empire's influence remains woven into the world's history. Through this timeline, the full arc of Rome becomes clear, showing how its leadership shaped one of the most influential civilizations ever recorded.